If a modern Marine platoon time traveled to the ancient Roman Empire and had to fight an entire Roman legion, would they win or lose? I have considered the two possible scenarios, and I discovered some interesting stuff. The first scenario is the most realistic and quick one. History shows us what happens when advanced armies face less advanced ones. Take the Battle of Cajamarca, for example. The Spanish, led by Francisco Pizarro, had only 168 soldiers, but managed to defeat 8,000 Inca warriors without losing a single guy. The Inca had never seen firearms before. So when Pizarro showed up with these weird-firing boomsticks and captured their emperor almost instantly, they freaked out. They ran in all directions, completely terrified by this strange new technology. This tactic is still used today and is known as shock and awe. It's all about unleashing such overwhelming and immediate force at the start of a battle that the enemy becomes completely demoralized, making them either fight poorly or give up altogether. Most likely, this is what the Romans would do too, ending up losing the battle. But this scenario is too boring. Now, let's get to the good stuff. In the second scenario, let's imagine that the Roman legionaries underwent some sort of incredibly strong psychological training and didn't just run away as soon as they saw the first rifle. Let's first analyze what the two sides have with them. The Marine platoon has 43 soldiers equipped with M4 carbines, M27 rifles, M320 grenade launchers, M67 fragmentation grenades, and 3 M240B medium machine guns. On the other side, the Roman legionaries have 5,000 soldiers equipped with a gladius, 2 pilum, and a pugio, a dagger used as an extra weapon for close combat. They also have armor and shields, even though they're not able to stop bullets. If we're being completely honest, the Roman legions might have been much bigger if we counted the auxiliaries too. These were non-citizen soldiers who served alongside the Roman legions, but we're not going to count them here since they weren't part of the core legion, and including them would make it way too overpowered. What we do have to take into account, as it's something really crucial to the whole battle, is logistics. On one hand, Marines are a small tactical unit not designed to stay in combat for many days. They only carry food for a short time. The Roman legion, on the other hand, usually brought a lot more food rations with them, giving them a big advantage over the long haul. The only area where the Marines might match the Romans is water, thanks to their water purification tablets, unless they're battling in a desert, of course. The Romans were also historically known to win a lot of their longer battles by quickly resupplying their legions. They could efficiently bring in food, equipment, and even new soldiers. For the Marines, the only way to restock on supplies would be to raid Roman villages. But that's a risky move because it would mean entering urban areas where the Romans know the terrain much better, increasing the chances of getting ambushed. Plus, one of the Marines' biggest advantages is staying at long range with their guns, while the Romans have to get up close with swords. In urban areas, where everything is much tighter and there are tons of angles, the Marines' long-range advantage would be pretty much useless. Furthermore, if the Marines were forced into close combat, they would find themselves at an incredible disadvantage. Not only do they have much less training for it, but their gear isn't designed for that kind of fighting. Marines usually wear a flak jacket and a Kevlar helmet, which leaves their limbs, face, and lower body completely exposed, as mobility is a big priority in modern warfare. On the other hand, the average legionnaire would be much better protected by their armor. This makes raiding villages a bad option, especially since each Marine life is incredibly valuable, given how many Romans each Marine could potentially take out. Also, Romans historically used tactics like the scorched earth strategy during Hannibal's time, for example, when they destroyed food supplies and cities the enemy could use to resupply. They'd even send less valuable soldiers, like slaves, to keep the enemy under constant attack and stress until they were worn down, then attack with their main force. From this analysis, it's clear that the Marines would need to defeat the Romans quickly or they'd almost certainly lose. They'd have to stick to rural areas with little natural cover to maintain the advantage of their weapons, which would leave them vulnerable to supply issues. We also have to remember that the Romans were really good at dividing their enemies with promises of power and rewards, but since we're ignoring morale, we'll leave that out. The Marines do have one big logistical advantage though: night vision goggles. This gives them the ability to operate effectively at night, something the Romans couldn't even imagine. If the Marines attacked villages at night to stock up on supplies or take out legionaries, their chances of success would be incredibly high. But now, let's get to the meat of the battle. Considering the equipment the Marines carry, and the fact that they have far fewer men, it's more likely that their quickness of movement will allow them to choose where the battle takes place. The best terrain for them would be a plain with no natural cover, except one for them to defend themselves from the Romans launching their pilum. The Romans would probably charge towards them, so the Marines would need to maintain distance using the bounding overwatch tactic, an alternating movement strategy that helps units advance while under fire. Naturally, the best thing the Romans could do to counter this continuous retreat and fire is to encircle the Marines. This would require them to spread out, making them much less vulnerable to grenades and bullets, giving them a huge advantage. This means the classic phalanx formation would not be effective at all. They could spread out into a single line, but that would make the legion 10 kilometers long, which would be extremely extremely difficult to organize and keep compact. The Marines would easily shoot at them or reposition while they try to organize. The edges of the line would be so far from the Marines that Roman soldiers would end up running blindly, essentially advancing with no clear orientation. The better solution would be a multi-file line with some distance between each file. A 5-line formation would span about 2 kilometers, which, while still cumbersome, would be much more manageable. The Romans also wouldn't be able to leverage their cavalry effectively. The Marines' equipment would allow them to spot the charging horses long before the horses see them, resulting in the cavalry being shot down quickly. Additionally, horses are large, easy targets, and even if they weren't killed, the noise of bullets would likely scare them off. The best way for the Romans to close the distance with the Marines would be to use a front line of expendable soldiers armed only with swords, allowing them to run as fast as possible toward the enemy. These soldiers would serve as sacrificial pawns, enabling the troops behind them to get closer to the Marines. The most problematic element for the Roman legionnaires would undoubtedly be the 3 Marines armed with M240B medium machine guns. These powerful weapons can fire up to 950 rounds per minute. They require reloading after every 100 rounds, a process that takes about 5 seconds, and the barrel must occasionally be replaced, which also takes 5 seconds. This setup would essentially create a meat grinder for the advancing legionnaires, forcing the Romans to prioritize taking out these gunners with their pilum. Each Marine would need to kill approximately 117 Roman legionnaires, requiring extreme accuracy, essentially 1 kill per bullet, due to their limited ammunition supply. However, it's worth noting that while Marines are typically required to carry a minimum number of rounds, they often carry much more than the standard issue. One major advantage of the Marines that we haven't yet considered is the possibility of tear gas. They also have gas masks, which would provide them with a massive edge over the legionnaires, who would have no means of protection against it. All things considered, the Marines would likely win in a direct confrontation with the 5,000 legionnaires. However, the Romans might still have a chance if they adopt a more strategic approach, such as engaging in a war of attrition, waiting for the Marines to finish their supplies while avoiding ambushes at night. We could also consider a third scenario. The Marines cannot be descendants of the Roman soldiers, as killing them would create a time travel paradox that might also kill the Marines themselves. However, that is a whole other thing, so just forget about it. If you want to discuss this video or suggest an idea for the next one, join my Discord, link in the description.